You know that moment, and I mean the exact moment when you're sitting in your car in a parking lot at like 6:45 in the morning, and you haven't started driving yet because you're just staring at the steering wheel? The engine's running, the heat is blowing that stale, recycled air. Your coffee is already lukewarm because you made it 20 minutes ago, but then spent those 20 minutes standing in the kitchen doing nothing, just sort of existing in that fog, where your body is awake but your brain hasn't agreed to participate yet. And here's the thing, this isn't even the start of your real job, this is the other one. The one you picked up 4 months ago because you did the math on your rent increase, and your grocery bill, and your car insurance going up for no reason you can identify, and the numbers didn't work anymore. They just didn't close. So now you're here, in a parking lot, about to walk into a place that doesn't know your middle name, doing work that has nothing to do with anything you actually care about, and the thought running through your head isn't even about money anymore. It's simpler than that. It's just, I'm so tired. I'm so tired and I still have my whole day ahead of me after this. And the worst part? The part that sits in your stomach like a rock you can't digest? You checked your bank account last night, and the number after 4 months of this second gig. 4 months of lost weekends and skipped dinners, and that constant gray haze of exhaustion, the number is barely different. Maybe a few $100s more than it was, maybe less, depending on the month. And you can't figure out where it's going. You're working more hours than you've ever worked in your life, and somehow, you're not pulling ahead. You're just running harder on the same wheel. Here's what nobody in your life is going to tell you, and honestly, it's something I wish someone had told me about 3 years earlier, then I figured it out. Your side hustle might be the single most expensive financial decision you're currently making. Not because of what it pays, because of what it costs. My name is Marcus, and I spend way too much time thinking about the gap between how people think money works and how it actually works, especially the ugly math that hides behind ideas that sound productive and responsible. If what I'm about to walk through changes how you see your own situation, even a little, consider subscribing, but only if it actually helps. I'm not here to collect followers. I'm here because this particular trap almost ate me alive, and I think it's eating a lot of other people right now too. So let me paint this picture a little more, because I think you need to see yourself in it before the math is going to land. And I'm not trying to be dramatic, this is just what it actually looks like from the inside. You wake up at 5:30 on a Saturday, not because you want to, not because you're one of those I own the morning people who posts about cold plunges. You wake up because you have a 4-hour shift at your second gig before your actual weekend can begin. Except your weekend doesn't really begin because by the time you get home, you're not rested, you're depleted, and you spend the afternoon on the couch in that half-sleep state where you're too tired to do anything but too wired to actually nap. Your partner asks if you want to go to that thing tonight, the dinner, the friend's birthday, the whatever, and you say, maybe, but you both know that means no, you're not going. You haven't gone to anything in weeks, and the excuse you give is always about being tired, but the real reason, the one you don't say out loud, is that going out costs money. $40 for dinner, $15 for parking, $20 for a gift. And you're doing all of this extra work specifically so you don't have to think about those numbers, and yet here you are, still thinking about those numbers. Here's another one. You're at your main job, your actual career, and you're in a meeting, and someone asks you a question, and you realize you have no idea what the last 10 minutes of conversation were about. Not because you don't care, because your brain is running on 4.5 hours of sleep, and the cognitive tank is just empty. And you catch yourself, and you recover, but there's this little flicker of awareness. You used to be sharper than this. You used to have ideas in these meetings. You used to be the person who followed up with the extra analysis, who volunteered for the visible project. Now you're the person who's just trying to get through the day without anyone noticing you're operating at 60%. And that gap between who you are at work now and who you were 6 months ago, that gap has a price tag. You just can't see it yet because it doesn't show up on a pay stub. One more, you're at the grocery store and you're buying the cheaper chicken again. The one that comes in the enormous family pack that you don't really need because it's just you, or just you and one other person, but the per pound price is lower, so you buy it, and then half of it goes bad in the fridge because you didn't have the energy to meal prep this week because you were working. You are spending money to save money on food you throw away because you're too exhausted from making money. That sentence should not make sense, but it describes your actual life right now. But here's where things get interesting, because there's a name for what's happening to you, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I call it the productivity mirage. It's this specific psychological trap where the act of being busy, of visibly grinding, of filling every hour with labor creates a feeling of financial progress that has almost no relationship to actual financial progress. Your brain conflates effort with outcome. And it does this because, honestly, that's how most of the rest of life works. You study more, you get better grades, you practice more, you play better. You work out more, you get stronger. Input correlates with output in almost every other domain, so your brain applies the same logic to money. More hours worked should equal more money kept. And it just doesn't. Not like that. Not once you account for what economists call the marginal cost of additional labor, which is just a fancy way of saying that every extra hour you work costs you more than the hour before it. And the productivity mirage has a vicious reinforcement mechanism built right into it. Every time you deposit a side hustle check, your brain gets a little hit of accomplishment. You earned that. You sacrificed for that. And that emotional reward, that feeling of being responsible and hardworking, becomes its own currency. You start valuing the feeling of productivity over the reality of your financial position. You check your total earnings on the gig app and feel a swell of pride, and that pride blinds you to the fact that your savings account hasn't actually moved. It's like standing on a treadmill and staring at the speedometer instead of looking out the window. The speedometer says you're doing great. The window says you haven't gone anywhere. There's also something, and this one is sneaky, that psychologists call the sunk cost trap that makes it nearly impossible to quit once you've started. You've already suffered through 3 months of this. You've already missed those dinners, already sacrificed those weekends, already pushed through those mornings in the parking lot. And quitting now would mean all that sacrifice was for nothing, so you keep going. Not because the math makes sense, but because stopping would force you to confront the possibility that it never made sense. And that confrontation, that reckoning with wasted time and unnecessary suffering, is so psychologically painful that most people would rather keep losing money than face it. Your brain will choose a predictable loss over an uncertain reassessment every single time. Think about what changes in your behavior when you're running a side hustle. Before the second job, you cooked most of your meals. Now you're grabbing food on the way to or from shifts because there's no time, and you're starving, and the drive-thru is right there. Before the second job, you did your own oil changes, your own basic home repairs, your own laundry on a schedule. Now you're paying for convenience everywhere because your time is no longer available for the maintenance tasks that used to save you money. Before the second job, you had the mental bandwidth to comparison shop, to wait for sales, to negotiate your internet bill once a year, to notice when a subscription price crept up. Now, you're in survival mode. You are, without exaggeration, paying a tax on your own exhaustion. And here's the part that really gets me. Research on decision fatigue, and this comes from work originally done, studying judges, making parole decisions, which, think about that context for a second, shows that the quality of your decisions degrades measurably as your cognitive resources deplete. Which means the version of you that's managing your money after a 60-hour work week is objectively worse at managing money than the version of you that works 40 hours. You make worse choices about what to buy. You make worse choices about what to eat. You make worse choices about whether to take on debt for a purchase. And you make dramatically worse choices about your career because you're too fried to update your resume, too drained to prepare for interviews, too beaten down to even imagine a different arrangement. The productivity mirage keeps you staring at the hours you're logging, while your actual financial position quietly deteriorates behind your back. It's like bailing water out of a boat while ignoring the new hole you just punched in the hull by working too hard to notice it. Now, let me run the numbers, because this is the part that made me physically uncomfortable when I first did it, and I think it might hit you the same way. Let's say you're someone I'll call Jamie. Jamie makes $48,000 a year at their main job. After federal and state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, all of it, Jamie takes home roughly $3,200 a month. Jamie's fixed expenses, rent, car payment, insurance, phone, utilities, minimum debt payments eat up about $2,400 a month. That leaves $800 for food, gas, everything else. It's tight. It's that specific kind of tight where nothing is technically overdue, but everything feels one flat tire away from falling apart. So Jamie picks up a side hustle. Let's say it's delivery driving, which is one of the most common ones right now. Jamie works an additional 15 hours a week, 3 hours a night, 5 nights a week. The app says Jamie is making about $22 an hour. Sounds decent, right? 15 hours times $22. That's $330 a week. Over a month, that's roughly $1,320 in gross side hustle income. Jamie looks at that number and thinks, okay, this is working. This is an extra $15,800 a year. That changes things. Except it doesn't, because here's what actually happens to that $1,320 a month. First, taxes. Jamie's side hustle income is self-employment income, which means Jamie owes self-employment tax on top of regular income tax. Self-employment tax alone is 15.3%. That's the Social Security and Medicare portion that a normal employer splits with you. But when you're your own boss, you pay both halves. Then there's the additional income tax. Jamie's base salary already put them in the 22% federal bracket, and this new income stacks on top. When you combine federal, state, and self-employment tax, Jamie is losing roughly 35 to 40% of every side hustle dollar to taxes. Let's call it 37%. That $1,320 just became $832. Next, vehicle costs. Jamie is driving roughly 400 miles a week for deliveries. That's a conservative estimate. The IRS mileage rate, which is supposed to capture the true cost of operating a vehicle, is 67 cents per mile in 2025. That accounts for gas, depreciation, tire wear, maintenance, all of it. 400 miles times 67 cents is $268 a month in real vehicle costs. Now Jamie's at $564. But we're not done. Jamie's eating out more because Jamie is driving during dinner hours. Figure an extra $8 to $10 a night on food purchased during shifts, 5 nights a week. That's another $200 a month, minimum. Now we're at $364. Jamie's also using more mobile data. The delivery apps chew through data plans. Jamie upgraded to the unlimited plan, which costs an extra $20 a month, $344. And here's one that nobody ever calculates. Jamie is sleeping about an hour less per night. That accumulated sleep deficit, and there is actual research on this, correlates with increased healthcare utilization, more sick days, more reliance on caffeine and convenient stimulants, higher likelihood of minor accidents. I'm not going to put a hard dollar figure on this one because it varies, but I want you to hold it in your mind as a real cost that is accruing. So Jamie's effective side hustle income, the actual money Jamie keeps, is somewhere around $344 a month for 15 hours of work a week, for 60 hours of work a month. That's not $22 an hour. That's, are you ready for this? $5.73 an hour. Below minimum wage. Significantly below minimum wage. Jamie is working a second job for less than the legal minimum that any employer would be allowed to pay. And even that number is generous, because it doesn't account for the opportunity cost, which is just a way of saying, what else could Jamie have done with those 60 hours a month? If Jamie had spent even 10 of those hours per month on professional development, learning a skill, getting a certification, networking, prepping for interviews, the expected salary increase over the next 2 years would likely dwarf the entire sum earned from delivery driving. We're talking about the difference between staying at $48,000 and moving to $55,000 or $60,000. An $8,000 annual raise is worth $667 a month in pre-tax income, which after taxes still leaves Jamie with more than the side hustle, and that raise compounds every year going forward. It becomes the new floor, not a temporary supplement. Think about it this way. Jamie spent a year earning roughly $4,128 in actual kept side hustle income, while simultaneously becoming less competitive, less visible, and less promotable at the job that pays 4 times more per hour. Jamie traded a potential $12,000 raise for a $4,000 side gig. Jamie, paid $8,000 essentially for the privilege of being exhausted. That's the math. And nobody in Jamie's life, not the gig platform, not the motivational content creators, not the well-meaning family members who said, good for you for working so hard, nobody pointed at those numbers. But let's push this one step further, because Jamie's story gets worse when you zoom out to a 5-year timeline. Over 5 years of side hustling at this pace, Jamie will earn roughly $20,600 in actual kept income. Meanwhile, the accelerated wear on Jamie's car, which is Jamie's only way to get to the primary job that pays real money, will shorten that vehicle's life by an estimated 2 to 3 years. A replacement vehicle, even a modest used one, costs $15,000 to $20,000. So, over a 5-year horizon, there's a very real scenario where the side hustle's total earnings are almost entirely consumed by the early replacement of the car that the side hustle destroyed. You hustle for 5 years and your net gain is basically zero, maybe negative. You ran on a hamster wheel for half a decade and ended up behind where you started, except now you're also 5 years older and 5 years more burned out. And there's a compounding dimension here that makes me genuinely angry when I think about it. Every year Jamie stays at $48,000 instead of advancing to $55,000 or $60,000. Jamie isn't just losing the difference in that year's salary. Jamie is losing the compounding effect of a higher base. Future raises are percentages of your current salary. Future retirement contributions are percentages of your current salary. Future Social Security benefits are calculated from your earnings history. By anchoring at a lower income because you're too depleted to pursue advancement, you're not leaving 1 year of money on the table. You're leaving 20 or 30 years of compounded growth on the table. The real cost of Jamie's side hustle, measured across a career, is not $4,000 a year. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime earnings that never materialize because the foundation was never raised. Now, I want to pull the camera back because this isn't just a Jamie problem. This is a system that's been built very deliberately to extract maximum labor from you at minimum cost. The gig economy did not emerge to liberate workers. It emerged to transfer risk from corporations to individuals. When you drive for a delivery platform, you are paying for your own vehicle, your own insurance, your own maintenance, your own healthcare, your own retirement contributions, and your own tax compliance. The platform takes its cut from every transaction, regardless of whether you make money or lose money on a given night. Think about that asymmetry for a second. The company profits on every delivery. You profit on some deliveries and lose money on others, depending on distance, wait times, tips, and vehicle costs. They have guaranteed revenue. You have variable income with fixed costs. That is not a partnership. That is a casino where the house edge is hidden inside an app that shows you a green number without showing you the red ones. And it's not just the gig platforms. There's an entire cultural infrastructure built around glorifying the side hustle. Social media is saturated with content telling you that wealthy people work harder, that passive income starts with active grinding, that the answer to financial stress is always more effort, never less spending. Never systemic critique, never the question of why your primary job doesn't pay enough to live on in the first place. And there's a reason for that. The work harder narrative benefits employers because it means you'll accept stagnant wages at your main job as long as you have a side hustle to fill the gap. It benefits gig platforms because you're their labor force. It benefits financial content creators because hustle content gets clicks. It benefits the entire consumer economy because exhausted people spend more impulsively than rested people. Nobody in that ecosystem, not one participant, has an incentive to tell you to stop, go home, sleep 8 hours, and spend your free time applying for a better primary job. Nobody profits from that advice, and so nobody gives it. And if you want to see how deep this goes, look at who's funding the side hustle success story content that fills your social media feeds. Gig platforms spend hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing every year. A significant chunk of that goes to influencer partnerships and content that normalizes gig work as empowerment, rather than what it often is: underpaid contract labor, with no benefits, no protections, and no ceiling. They don't show you the driver who worked 50 hours last week and netted less than minimum wage. They show you the outlier who made 6 figures, which, sure, that person exists, in the same way that lottery winners exist. The existence of a lottery winner is not a financial argument for buying lottery tickets. And here's what really bakes my noodle. The companies most aggressively promoting side hustle culture are often the same companies whose primary employees can't afford to live on the wages being offered. The side hustle doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists because primary wages have been stagnant, adjusted for inflation, for decades. The side hustle is a patch for a system that broke the main job, and instead of fixing the main job, we built an entire economy around monetizing the wreckage. The irony that should make you want to flip a table is this. The cultural narrative says that picking up a side hustle is the responsible, hardworking, financially smart thing to do. But when you run the actual numbers, the real, all-in, after-tax, after-cost, after-opportunity cost numbers, the side hustle is often the financially reckless choice disguised as discipline. The genuinely responsible move, the actually strategic move, might be to work less, protect your cognitive resources, and invest your limited energy into the one income stream with the highest ceiling. The lazy choice and the smart choice are the same choice, and our entire culture is structured to make sure you never realize that. Here's something I think about a lot, and it's going to sound backwards at first, so stay with me. The people who look the most productive are often building the least wealth, and the people who look like they're doing nothing strategic, the ones who leave work at 5, who have hobbies, who aren't grinding every weekend, are often the ones quietly compounding advantages that don't show up until years later, because they have the energy to negotiate. They have the clarity to spot opportunities. They have the bandwidth to take a calculated risk, like switching jobs for a 30% raise, because they're not so depleted that the mere thought of updating a resume makes them want to lie down on the floor. Exhaustion is not a strategy. It's a condition that makes strategy impossible, and the side hustle industrial complex has convinced a generation that running on fumes is the same thing as running a business. And look, I want to be clear about something before I close this out. because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, okay, Marcus, that's nice, but I need the money now. I can't invest in myself when my rent is due in 11 days and I'm $200 short. I hear you. I genuinely hear you. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everyone has the luxury of quitting their second job tomorrow. Some of you are in situations where the side hustle isn't optional, it's survival. And if that's you, nothing I've said is meant to make you feel bad about doing what you need to do to keep the lights on. That's not what this is. But what I am asking you to do, and honestly, this is the only thing I'm asking, is to stop treating the side hustle as the plan. It's a tourniquet, it's not surgery. It stops the bleeding long enough for you to address the actual wound, which is almost always one of three things. Your primary income is too low for your cost of living, your fixed expenses have crept beyond what your income can support, or you're carrying debt that's eating your paycheck before you ever see it. The side hustle doesn't solve any of those problems. It masks them. It gives you just enough relief to delay the harder, more permanent fixes. So here's what I challenge you to do, and it doesn't cost $1. Sit down this week with a calculator, with a notes app, with a napkin, I don't care, and run the real numbers on your side hustle, not the gross, the net, after taxes, after expenses, after the meals you wouldn't have bought, after the vehicle wear, after the subscriptions you keep because you're too tired to cancel, after the gym membership you're paying for but haven't used in 3 months because you're never not working. Get to the real number, the hourly number. And then ask yourself, is this the best use of the only non-renewable resource I have? Because here's what I think is actually happening for a lot of you, and it's not a money problem, it's an identity problem. Somewhere along the way, our culture fused together the idea of being a hard worker with the idea of being a good person. And so quitting the side hustle doesn't just feel financially risky, it feels morally wrong. Like you're being lazy, like you're giving up, like you're not doing enough. And that guilt, that bone-deep Protestant work ethic guilt, is the most expensive emotion you carry. It's more expensive than any subscription, more expensive than any impulse purchase, because it keeps you locked into arrangements that cost you more than they pay you, and it makes you feel virtuous while it does it. Your parents might not understand. They grew up in an economy where extra hours at the factory actually translated to a proportionally bigger paycheck, where overtime was real money because it was time and a half with benefits, not self-employment income taxed at the highest effective rate. When your dad says, "Good for you," working 2 jobs, he means it with love, but he's applying a mental model from a labor market that no longer exists. And your friends on social media, the ones posting about their side hustle income, they're showing you the speedometer, not the window. They're not lying, exactly. They're just telling a story that skips every expense line between gross revenue and actual kept dollars. And you're comparing their highlight reel to your reality, which is always going to feel like losing. You have permission from me, from the math, from basic logic to stop performing productivity and start practicing strategy, to say no to the extra shift, to spend a Saturday morning reading a book instead of driving strangers' groceries across town for $5.73 an hour, to protect your sleep like it's a financial asset because it is, to treat your energy like a budget because it is one, and right now, you're overspending. The person who turns down the side hustle and spends that time becoming undeniable at their main job isn't lazy. They're not entitled. They're not naive. They're the person who actually ran the numbers. And the numbers said, the most valuable thing you can do with your time is not fill it with more work. It's fill it with the right work. Or sometimes, and this is the part that will feel like cheating until it starts working, fill it with nothing at all. You're not behind because you're not working hard enough. You're behind because you've been working hard at the wrong thing. And the moment you see that clearly, I mean really see it, the way you can see your own breath on a cold morning, that undeniably, that's the moment everything starts to shift. Not because your bank account changes overnight, but because you do.